Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is show number 183. It's Wednesday, the 27th of October, and it's a fairly dull, if quite mild day here in London at the moment. Looking out the window, looks like it could rain at any moment, but hey-ho, at least it's not snowing. So I've got a fairly packed show again today. A whole bunch of news stories, and we'll finish off with the discussion point on getting a bike ULEZ compliant if you don't have one that automatically meets the standards. We'll see how we can do that. Right, so what have we got for you today? Well, Police Watchdog has found that some speed cameras are actually installed to make money. Northamptonshire police are seeking a Suzuki rider who fled the scene of a collision with a pedestrian. And over in Dublin, the Gardai are similarly seeking a rider who rode off after seriously injuring a pedestrian. Meanwhile, Sunderland and South Tyneside police are planning an off-road biking park to tackle nuisance riding. Rather novel plan there, which we'll come and have a look at. The organisers of the Isle of Wight road races have actually submitted their formal application now to the local authorities. And we'll take a quick look at a motorcycle. We haven't actually looked at a motorcycle for a couple of shows. I've been so busy with other stuff. But we'll have a look at the NT 1100, which is now broken cover. It's not exactly been a secret, but we now know exactly what it looks like. And finally, as I said, today's discussion point, if you don't have a brand spanking bang up to date new bike, we'll show you whether or not you may be able to squeak through the ULEZ exemption all the same. And if you think that's a very London centric story, yes it is, but bear in mind that many other cities have plans to introduce these ultra low emission zones. So settle yourself down for the next 30 odd minutes while we go through the show. But we'll start off just about reminding you about the next live webinar, which is called Breaking the Circle, and that'll be on Wednesday the 3rd of November at 8 p.m. in the evening, and tickets are available now for that. I'll give you the link to that in just a moment. It's a bit of a coincidence actually, because whilst I have been promoting this for the last 3 weeks or so, somebody just a few days ago, and it wasn't me, honest, asked the question on my regular bike forum: trail braking on the road, is it useful? I've always looked on it as a track technique for squeezing extra seconds, but does it have a place on the road? And he actually linked to a video which I'd already seen incidentally, and frankly it's actually a pretty poor explanation and demonstration of what trail braking actually is. The question itself about trail braking is something that comes up very, very regularly indeed. And unfortunately, there's just so much really, really poor information out there. Not just that YouTube video, but what riders are actually taught and what they learn for themselves. Now, there are instructors on basic training who hammer into novice riders that they should never ever touch the front brake on the road because it will have you off, was what I heard from one instructor. And so novice riders are taught only to use the rear brake. Now, there's reasons for that, which I'll go into when in the presentation. Then there are the advanced instructors who I've heard say, if you're riding right, you should never have to touch your brakes in a bend. Well, okay, we can all make mistakes. There are others who say, what's the problem? I do it all the time. It's fun and it helps me ride faster on the road. Well, they're clearly not seeing the issue of carrying more speed. And there are the track riders who give us the explanation that the loading up the front tyre gives it more grip and changes the geometry, which makes the bike steer faster, which ignores the fact that if you are braking and steering, you're actually asking the front tyre to grip more. And the other problem is most bikes, when you hit the brakes, actually want to go straight on. So there's a contradiction there. And then finally, there are one or two riders who actually say, what's the point in learning this stuff? You can't plan for every circumstance that may come up. And sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So who's right? Who's wrong-headed? So as I say, if I always try to give you accurate information and an honest assessment about what's useful and what's not so useful on the road. I will explain the differences between track and road riding. So if you want to find out a little bit more about this, as I say, the the webinar is going out on the first Wednesday of November, which is the 3rd. It's at 8 p.m. in the evening, and the tickets are available now via the link there. Right, enough about me. Onto the Police Watchdog, which has found what many of us will probably have suspected for quite a few years, that some speed cameras are being used as a tool for making money rather than actually generating more safety. The report was by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. So it is actually a very official body. It's not, your local sort of speed camera awareness watchdog or something. It is actually a government body. And what they found was that in certain circumstances, the placement of speed cameras had been chosen because the areas were, quote, good hunting grounds for speeders, rather than because they were hotspots for collisions. It said apparent unwillingness to support education over enforcement had led to suspicion among officers, including some at chief officer level, that the focus of activity was intended to increase revenue for the safety partnership. And they continued, they gave examples of some camera sites they believed didn't have a history of collisions or other identified vulnerabilities. Elsewhere, we were told that the reason enforcement took place at certain locations was that they were good hunting grounds rather than because they had a history of collisions. And that's on the back of a 41% increase in the number of speeding fines handed out between 2011 and 2018. So what makes speed cameras go into place? Well, we were told originally that they would have to be installed where there was a history of collisions. But when I actually looked into it, the criteria were actually fairly loose. The collisions could have happened within several kilometres of the crash site, and you didn't actually need many collisions either. So basically, it pretty much in a built-up area allows you to put a camera pretty much anywhere you like. So it's not the police who actually decide where these cameras go in, but road safety or camera partnerships, of which the police are simply members of a group. And they did say that in most places the rationale was clear, and it was intended to produce a process which would give the public confidence that they were in the right places. But they did find that in some areas, as I say, that the camera partnerships actually were looking to make money from these things. And one thing they found was that some partnerships actually specifically prohibited the local speed watch schemes. Those are the ones where the sort of people stand around in high-vis jackets waving speed cameras at you, but aren't actually police, and you'll probably get a letter from the police telling you that you have been caught exceeding the speed limit and reminding you to obey the speed limit signs. So that's all about education rather than enforcement. But yeah, as I say, one safety camera partnership actually directly prohibited a speed watch scheme from operating where the mobile speed cameras were active. The Inspectorate said there are government guidelines on the issue, but that we believe they should be refreshed to include what revenue is raised and how it is spent. The circular should include a requirement that forces or local road safety partnerships should publish the annual revenue received as a result of the provision of driver offended related training and how that revenue is spent. They say that police forces do not directly make money from the enforcement of speeding fines, and it does go to the Exchequer. And the Chancellor, currently Rishi Sunak, of course, he's the person who makes decisions where that money goes to. And the annual budget of the government actually sets out how it's distributed. But the report noted that police do recover costs from the provision of speed awareness courses, where those courses are offered as an alternative to penalty points. So, yes, and they basically said that the large increase in the offences was due to the increased use of speed enforcement cameras. Right, okay. So don't forget, if you've got any questions, comments, anything you want to say basically about the show, I will try to get back to you during the course of the show, if I possibly can. If I can't, I will contact you at the end of the show, if I possibly can. So this morning we've got Nigel and Clive, both saying good morning. Hello, guys. Good to see you. Okay, so what else has been going on in the world? Well, Northampton police are searching from the rider of what was described as an electric blue-coloured Suzuki GS 1000 after the motorcycle was involved in a collision with a 22-year-old man outside a bar in Northampton. Now, the crash happened at 11:45 p.m. on Friday, October the 15th, and the reports are that the rider sped away from the scene, having failed to stop. The pedestrian was actually taken to hospital, but assessment there was that he was released with only minor cuts and bruises. Now, it may seem that if this was a minor bump that it's not worth bothering, but obviously you can get into very serious trouble for failing to stop at the scene of an accident, and police are now seeking anyone who witnessed the accident. And of course, with CCTV cameras covering vast amounts of the city centres these days, there's a fair chance that it's on a CCTV, and it's even possibly on somebody's dash cam footage. So Northampton police are asking people to come forward if they have any evidence on 101. We tend to think of motorcyclists as the victims of these of sort of hit and runs, but just over in Dublin, same week, a woman in her 20s has suffered serious injuries after she was hit by what was described as the rider of a scrambler motorcycle. Now, that again happened late at night, 11 to 11:20 on a Sunday night, and she was taken to hospital, and she has serious injuries. And she is in a serious condition. Sources said the rider actually fled the crash scene on foot, and he had visible injuries too. The Garda in Ireland have been cracking down on illegal off-road bikes because obviously they are untaxed and they are not insured either. So the road was closed on Monday, and they were actually examining the scene with forensic crash investigators. So the Garda too over there are appealing to witnesses for this crash. Right, Paul has looked in. Good morning, Paul. And he says an inordinate amount appear to be on steep downhill sections. Yes, I can agree with that. Yes, where you may well pick up speed unintendedly. I can think of at least two just off the top of my head straight away. Accidents occurring a mile away. Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't disagree with that. We campaigned for a camera to go in when I lived in Kent, and we had a very dangerous junction. Basically, it was a 5-way crossroads with a lot of oncoming vehicles turning right across the path of vehicles coming around a corner, a blind corner, straight into this junction at considerable speed in a lot of cases. Even though they'd lowered the speed limit to 40, 40 was actually still a bit quick to stop. And we did suggest that would be a very good place for a speed camera. There was a pub on the corner, actually. We'd be sitting there drinking a pint of beer, and quite often have our beer drinking interrupted by the sound of screeching tyres, and on fairly regular occasions breaking glass too. So yes, I agree that there are a lot of problems with the placement of speed cameras. Yes, right. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh yes, I was just going to remind you, of course, that if you missed the show live, you can always catch up here on Facebook. It also goes out on YouTube on my Survival Skills UK channel. Don't forget that all important UK, or you will end up with somebody sharpening Boy Scouts with a piece of blunt wood or something. Every Wednesday and Sunday, nearly always live at 11 a.m. is when the show is scheduled. Right, okay, so yes, now I just mentioned the Irish problem there with nuisance riders on scramblers and the sad collision that's left a pedestrian seriously injured. Now, I've mentioned many schemes in the past which seek to sort this out, the police often sort of monitoring the problem areas. There was a proposal fairly recently from one of the crime commissioners for all bikes to have trackers fitted, so that they could be located wherever they were. Not really very likely with an off-road bike, but hey ho. But there's a novel scheme being proposed for the north of England, and police in Sunderland and South Tyneside are actually looking at the possibility of creating a dedicated off-road riding facility. Now, that apparently has already been trialled in Scotland. I don't know anything about the Scottish location, so I will have to try to find out a little bit more about it. But anyway, what they're saying here is that motorcycle disorders are a regular topic at council meetings across Tyne and Wear, with concerns over speeding, noise and public safety. And although the police have rolled out schemes to better identify riders and vehicles, the issue still takes up a large amount of police resources. So the proposals are still being developed and subject to further decision making, but the idea would be to give people who want to ride off-road motorcycles somewhere away from a populated area where they could ride the vehicle safely. The plans were raised at a Sunderland North Area Committee meeting. The force is looking apparently to acquire a plot of land near South Tyneside. A notice was given that on an update on the project went to their community area forum on October the 18th. Now, Neighbourhood Inspector Denise Easton said a meeting is expected to take place this month to provide more information on the scheme and how it's worked in practice in Scotland. The Northumbria Crime Commissioner, Kim McGuinness, I think she's the one who was proposing all bikes to be fitted with trackers, if I remember right. So we also need to look at wider changes, and part of that means looking to see if young people can be taught to enjoy motorbikes without causing disruption to others. It's great to see the police exploring these options. That's a very positive statement, isn't it? She goes on to say, yes, there will sometimes need to be a police response, but alongside that, there needs to be joined up work from councils, youth services, housing providers, and others to tackle the causes of antisocial behaviour. Now, if you go back into ancient history, go and look up Circuit Carol in France, Paris to be precise. It was actually it's a physical racetrack, a tarmac circuit, where you can actually go and do track days, which was set up just outside Paris specifically to tackle the problem of young riders street racing in the city. I'd be interested. I don't know how successful it was. I gather, as far as I know, the project was pretty successful, and the circuit is still there, and lots of riders still take advantage of it. So, schemes like this can be done if there is the will, and if there isn't, sort of too many local objections, because there will be objections on noise and disturbance grounds from locals. You can absolutely bet your boots on that. As we will see on the next item. Don't forget, if you enjoy the show, do pop over to my coffee page. You can drop me a coffee over there and help support me coming back and making these shows twice a week. And for your cash, you get access to hundreds of better biking articles. I'm well through putting up 2019's old Facebook posts. 2014 to 2018 are already up, and with a bit of luck I might even complete 2020 by the end of the year, in which case you'll have virtually every better biking post that I've ever written on Facebook available to you, all for the price of a coffee. Right, okay, so the next story. Yes, now the Isle of Wight road races. This one's been running, and the organisers are facing the next step to promote what they claim is a world-class motorcycle racing event. They've actually made a formal application now for a motor race order, an MRO, and that's been submitted to the Isle of Wight Council. And it's due to go before the local authorities cabinet next year. Now, the on, off, and on again event has now been penciled in. That's what the report says, for April 2021. to 24. And frankly, using pencil rather than pen is probably a good event. Now, just a little bit of history. You'll probably remember the event was launched as the Diamond Races. They were due to run in October 2020, but they were put straight on the back burner by the pandemic. A new event, the Isle of Wight Road Races, was then announced, which would replace the Diamond Races, and they were set up by different organisers to run on a different circuit on a slightly different part of the island. But that event was then cancelled in turn. So where are we now? Well, we're back on the original circuit, but under the banner of the organisers of the second event. So hopefully you did follow some of that. Now, the event aims to attract some of motorcycling's leading riders, and the idea is to run it in a time trial format similar to the Isle of Man TT, but frankly, it faces stiff opposition from local residents because the 12.5 mile course, 12.4 mile course, let's not exaggerate, passes through a number of villages: Chale Green, Kingston, Shorewell, Brystone, before finally running along the coastal military road, which is a major communication link between the east side of the island and the south corner of the island. So Councillor Phil Jordan, the council member for Transport and Infrastructure, said at this stage it would be inappropriate for the council to comment on a live application. There will, however, be a period of consultation when people will have the opportunity to have their say on the proposal, and further details are to be announced in due course. In addition to the motor race order, the council will be required to consider a temporary traffic regulation order for that road closure. It will also divert buses, for example. Legislation dictates that where a closure will remain in place for longer than 3 days, and the council was minded to approve the application, further approval must be sought from the Secretary of State for at least 4 weeks before the start of the event. That's what an Isle of Wight council spokesman said. It seems a bit odd that one councillor is saying it's too soon to inappropriate to make a comment, whilst another one says that the council's minded to approve the consultation. I've already seen one letter about a response to the race. I'll cover that in the next show briefly. So if you want my personal opinion, much as I would like to pop over to the Isle of Wight and watch an event like this, particularly as I've got friends over there, which would make it accommodation easy, I won't be booking any ferry tickets just yet. Okay, so where are we now? Well, we've finally come to a motorcycle. I mentioned that Honda have been teasing us for quite some time with their touring bike based on the successful Africa Twin. Well, here it is. If I can actually get the picture up again, it always takes far too many clicks to do this. Okay, there it should be on screen. Let's zoom in a little, give you a slightly better view of the thing. There we are. So that's the new NT 1100 Tourer. Now, it's yet another example of how individual models are becoming fewer and fewer, and how more and more bikes are now based around the platform, as they are known. And in this case, the platform is the steel frame and aluminium subframe from the Africa Twin, but the front and back ends are now propped up with different suspension, and of course the bodywork is somewhat different too. Front forks and rear shock sit on 17-inch road wheels as well, as opposed to the off-road 21/17 combo on the Africa Twin. The other common feature of this bike is obviously the Africa Twin engine. It gets 1084cc, the second generation Africa Twin motor. It's a parallel twin. That also gets some tweaks apparently to boost mid-range torque, which frankly is where you need it on a bike like this, not up at the top end. You get 100 horsepower. 7,250 RPM, and peak torque at 6,250. And finally, the machine gets the similar, same electronics package basically from the Africa Twin. No doubt has been tweaked somewhat, but you get cornering ABS, lean sensitive traction control, 3 riding modes as standard, 2 customizable user modes, and the 6.5-inch TFT screen that delivers the usual rider information. It also allows you to connect to the phone, and so you can not only use a navigation app on the screen, but you can also listen to music and make calls. Just what you actually need when you're trying to focus on riding, in my opinion, but hey ho, what do I know? So the new bodywork is designed for touring. You get a 5-position screen there. You get a lowered 820mm seat. It's a little bit high, I would have said, at 32 inches. Still not the lowest seat I've ever seen. The panniers come as standard, as do a center stand and heated grips, which is good news, but it does all add to the take-home price. If you want the options, of course there are options packages, and you can add such things as a top box, a comfort seat. It makes you wonder why they don't put a comfort seat on it before. Is it really suggesting that the original seat is an uncomfort seat? Ridiculous, isn't it? But there we go. And of course you can also get the now obligatory quick shifter and auto blipper if you can't actually use the clutch. If you want a better look, there's the usual ghastly marketing video has gone up on YouTube. I shall just put the link up for that to you, so you can go along and have a look at it. The MCN broke the story here in the UK, and they say that it should be in dealers just after the new year, and they claim it's a slimmed down sports tourer that has modern performance, old school practicality, and a sensible price tag. I'd say it's a porky 238 or 525 pounds, considering it's just a twin. You can add an extra 10 kilos to that if you want the DCT version, by the way. It's a modest performer compared to some of the opposition. As for being user-friendly, well, of course, it's packed with non-user serviceable electronics. And I also say it's actually delivered for a fairly wallet-damaging 12k. Add, and again, another £1,000 if you want the DCT option. 13k is pretty expensive when you go and look at that new Suzuki Tourer. It's probably a lovely bike to ride, but really, I'd rather see them lop 30-odd kilos off the weight of the machine and give it rather less electricity. But then I guess I am just old-fashioned these days. Right, now last time out, oh, Nigel's just popped up with a comment. Can't say looks all that good. Looks a bit angular and boxy to me. Actually, yeah, funnily enough, I was looking at the picture a few minutes ago, and yes, it does look very angular, doesn't it? I'm just trying to think of a bike that it reminds me of. I can't off the top of my head. Probably something like an MV or something, which was squared off lines. But yes, I don't think it's particularly pretty. Anyway, there we go. That's the Africa Twin. Now, as I say, last time out, I did remind viewers that the London ULEZ ultra low emission zone has extended outwards. It now encompasses every road within the North and South circulars. So yes, this is a London centric topic, but it will affect likely other cities soon. So you too may be interested in this information in the not too distant future. Now, the first thing to ask is how the zones are actually going to be monitored. Well, CCTV cameras are to be positioned at entry points, but also within the zone. So if you live in the zone, you can't just jump in your car or on your bike and zip around and hope not to be nailed, because there will be cameras at random places. Where they are, anybody's guess. No idea. Will they cover every single entry point to the ULEZ zone straight away? well, I don't know. It's I can't even imagine how many cameras they'll need. Somebody's probably counted. Anyway, automatic number plate recognition technology will read the registration plate, something we're very familiar with other charging zones, and then that's cross-referenced to the DVLA records. Now, if the NOx levels are below 0.15 grams per kilometre, there's no charge. If you do have to pay, it's £12.50 a day, and as I mentioned last time, if you don't pay, the fine is 160 quid with money off for good behaviour if you pay it early. As I pointed out last week, all Euro 3 compliant motorcycles are exempt, but not all compliant bikes are Euro 3. So here's where it gets complicated. Now, try to follow this because it's not easy. It took me some time to work it out. Any new model that was granted type approval after the 1st of January 2006 needs to meet Euro 3 standard. So that's any new model, the date it was type approved by the EU. But any particular bike only needed to meet Euro 3 if it was first registered after the 1st of July 2007. So if you bought a very early model from a model run, there's a possibility that you actually got a Euro 3 bike, but wasn't actually registered after the 1st of July, registered before it. How do you know whether your bike is compliant? Well, what the TfL have done is actually applied a simple cut-off date. What they've done is all bikes registered post 2007 are exempt, which means an 08 or a 58 plate, basically anything later is exempt. Euro 4 and Euro 5 bikes, of course, go straight through without any problems either. So how do you know if your bike is compliant? Well, the first port of call is the TfL's online checker. And I'll give you the link to that here. There we go. That's coming up straight away. So basically, head to the online link, and what you can do is check whether or not your bike is actually in the database. If it is, all well and good, you're exempt. If it isn't, then you are not exempt, and in theory, the ULEZ charge applies. But here's the good news. You can try to prove your motorcycle emits lower emissions than the Euro 3 standard. And because of the way that bikes have been built to comply with emission standards in other countries, there's a good chance that a bike registered under the previous Euro 1 and Euro 2 standards will also emit less than the 0.15 kilograms per kilometre, grams per kilometre of NOx, but they simply weren't recorded as doing so. So one suggestion is that you check your V5C, the logbook as it's more commonly known, because it may actually record the NOx emissions. Now, my car has the data, but my ULEZ compliant 09 registered XJ6 doesn't, and of course neither does my 2002 Hornet, although interestingly at least one 2002 Honda Deauville apparently does have the NOx number on the logbook and has actually been granted exemption through that. Now there is a bit of confusing information on the internet. Some people say all you need to do is send off the copy of the logbook complete with the data shown on the logbook to get the exemption. Other people say that that's not acceptable on its own and that you have to do something else, and that's to obtain a certificate of compliance, COC, and that has to be obtained from the bike manufacturer. Now, the bike manufacturer will have emissions data, and if that shows that it's the model itself was designed to emit less than 0.15 grams per kilometre, they should be able to supply you with that information in this certificate of compliance. It may be free, but some manufacturers are charging. I think Honda are doing it for free, but don't quote me. Suzuki are charging over £100. I do know that, and I think BMW were also charging. So now you have the certificate of compliance, which covers your model of machine. You send it off to the TfL along with the registration document, the V5C, and you do that via their online inquiry facility. And if you need to do that, you do it here. So let's put the next one up. That's the next link. So these are all going in the comment stream. You'll be able to see them later. So, whoops. There's your link to do that. Okay, now here's the bad news. Even if somebody else has got their bike through and compliant, it doesn't mean that yours is automatically added to the list. Even though they are identical models, you still have to do it on your own. It's done on a vehicle by vehicle basis. Which is bonkers, really, because the whole point of the certificate of compliance is it's the manufacturer saying that all of those particular models are compliant. So it's just making extra work for individuals to avoid the ULEZ. And it's also making it more work for TfL to check it all. So I'm struggling to see the point of that. Now, what if you can't get a certificate of compliance? Well, there's compliance. There's one final route open. You can try an emissions test on your specific bike. Now, the bad news is there is actually only one TfL approved testing station right at this moment, and that is at Riverbank Motorcycles. Here is their website link, and that's just coming up on screen as well. £175 is the current cost. You'll have to ride your bike and, of course, now pay the ULEZ charge for today. You'll have to ride your bike to them. They're in E3, which is just off the A12, which is the road that runs down to the Blackwall Tunnel. They're just around the corner from the newish London Stadium where West Ham play. So yeah, £175 sounds quite a lot of money, but frankly, if you're paying £12.50 a day on a regular basis, you'll soon recoup that charge. Now, the list of earlier motorcycles which will meet the standards is growing. For example, as I said, my 2002 Hornet doesn't get an automatic exemption, but it does appear to meet Euro 3, and people have actually got the certificate and gone through the testing route to get an exemption already. If your bike fails the test, what then? Well, Riverbank say they can do some work on your bike to attempt to make it compliant, which presumably involves some tuning, possibly to, I don't know, richen the mixture, possibly, I don't know. Usually the leaner the mixture is, the higher the NOx emissions, if I remember correctly from my schoolboy chemistry. The proviso is that you should accept your older bike may not pass, even though a similar model or year has, and the fact that another bike has passed shouldn't be taken as a guarantee that your own vehicle might be exempt. So caveat emptor on that one. There's one final option. You can also ride a 40-year-old machine. If you've got it re-registered as a historic vehicles, it's automatically exempted from ULEZ charges. Interesting question, actually. What's the industry been doing to reduce the impact on riders, particularly that requirement with the certificate of conformity, where the manufacturer guarantees that an entire model range will meet the standard, yet the TfL still insist each rider commits their data to upload it individually. Well, the MCIA said they were in discussions with the TfL to try to mitigate the problem several years ago. So frankly, I've not seen any evidence they had any success with that. All right, so there is a long list on that website of bikes which have passed, and they include things like a 125 Dylan from 2002, which is a scooter, a California EV 1100 from 2001, the SV650 from 2004, Triumph Scrambler from 2003, and even an RD350 from 1984 has squeaked through. So there you go. That's it for today. I'll just remind you that I'm still running courses on fine days. We will avoid the bad weather days now by running courses at short notice. And don't forget the webcast on 3rd of November, which I talked about earlier. That's it for today. Thank you very much for looking into the show. Certainly hope you've enjoyed it. If you are out there on the road, do ride safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on Sunday at 11. So from Kevin Williams and the Elevenses, bye for now.